Welcome to the module on procedure of registering an NGO, Memorandum and rules, regulations and the role of trustees. The learning objectives of this module are to know the legal provisions, to identify diverse legal platforms which would be used for establishing a NGO, to realize that a particular body of legislations would suit the type of NGO or a particular purpose of creating a NGO, to make an attempt to formulate a legal text in view of establishing a NGO, to learn how a NGO works within the legal framework in India. Non-governmental organization can be created or established under the different legal provisions. Many countries have exclusive legislations to commence, administer and wind up service organizations or charitable activities. The same applies also to India. However, we do not have a single centralized uniform legal provision for all the NGOs in the country. Hence, we will have to study all the leading legal provisions that facilitate the formation, administration and termination of an NGO. Legal provisions in India. There are not many legal provisions in a uniform way or only one set of legislations for the whole of the Union of India. There are a few laws for NGOs at the central level and a few applicable in the states. The tax exemption laws are comparatively uniform in India. Some of the leading legal provisions are Indian Trust Act 1882, an act under which a NGO like a public trust can be established, Charitable and Religious Trust Act 1920, an act which facilitates in establishing a NGO for religious objectives. The Societies Registration Act 1860 is the central act and many states have similar acts. Under this act, one can establish a NGO as a registered society. The Companies Act 1956 and the new act, the Companies Act 2013, through which a NGO can be established as a charitable, often called Section 25 or Section 8 respectively, company. Income Tax Act 1961 is a tax law applicable to the whole Union of India and some provisions under this apply to NGOs. The NGOs seek tax exemption also under this provision. The Foreign Contribution Regulation Act 2010 is a legislation in India, unlike many other countries, which monitors, controls and regulates when NGOs intend to receive and use any resources from foreign sources. Formation of an NGO. NGO can be formed by living persons and by juridic persons, persons in the eyes of the law. NGO can be formed also through a will, a testament. As stated above, any one of the legal platforms could be used for the formation of an NGO. In brief, the platforms are the public trust, the registered societies and Section 25 or Section 8 company. Use of trust laws to establish an NGO. The author, creator, settler, founder is a person who reposes trust in another or others. The author is one who has some resources or the property, one who has a clear, legally recognizable and altruistic objectives or objectives. The persons in whom the trust is reposed and property is made over are called trustees. The intention of the founder, when it is committed to writing, we call it a trust deed. When such an intention in writing is registered, we call it as the registered trust deed. Thus, in every legal form chosen to establish a NGO, there are the above mentioned classification of persons as founders who create a NGO, there are administrators or trustees who execute, and there are purposes for which such a NGO is established. This also involves the process of registration and legal compliances. The legal compliances prior to registration, conditions precedent for treatment of an NGO organization. The presumption is that almost all NGOs seek tax exemption. Tax exemption is one of the key elements which make them a little different from organization for profit. In this context, an NGO is established for the benefit of the general public or a section of the public, is established for carrying on permitted welfare activities or any activity which is construed by society and the government as general public utility, is not established for the benefit of any particular caste, family, narrow groups like employees of the firm only, is not established for the benefit of any of its members. The members can be of any type, including founding members, governing body and other functionaries. Though oral understanding of an NGO is permissible, yet for all practical purposes, the internal administration, functioning and self-governance has to be in clear and definite form. Depending on the legal framework, it might be called a trust deed, memorandum of association and bylaws or any other name. In the case of a trust, the settlor or author must communicate in clear words, and in the case of the society, the 7 or more people must sign to their joint goals and purposes, is obliged to function for the purposes it was created or established with the resources it has generated and not for any other purpose. It is also expected to give an understanding that in the event of winding up or terminating the NGO's activity, it will not share any assets with the members, but will transfer the same to another NGO having the similar objectives. Legal compliance post registration. Once the settlor or author in the trust or the founding member in the society or 3 or more trustees, directors in the company decide to formulate a legal body, there is a stipulated time limit within which they need to register. This would differ in case they also put at the disposal of the new intent NGO's immovable property. Registration within the stipulated time is necessary. Once registered under the Trust Acts, Registered Societies Laws or Companies Laws, it shall obtain a permanent account number, and for tax exemption section 12A, registration under the Income Tax Act. If the NGO has immovable property, then registration under Transfer of Property Act and compliances with Registration Act. According to the state laws, there will be some minor variations. For example, in Maharashtra, if one chooses to have an NGO registered as a society, then the same will have to be registered also under the Bombay Public Trust Act 1950. Nevertheless, all the NGOs post registration will have to comply with the following legal requirements. The legal compliances after registration involves the relevant NGO laws, the tax laws and the other activity related laws. If the NGO is registered under trust, society or company laws, then its respective rules are to be followed. Since NGOs enjoy tax benefit, all tax norms are to be observed. Most of the NGOs are involved in different activities like education and healthcare. This calls upon such NGOs also to comply with the activity related laws. Example, education work has to comply with all the education related laws. Legal requirements of a trust. A founder shall be legal requirements of a trust. A founder shall be major and in legal language competent to contract. A founder shall have some property to give in trust. A founder shall have a clear intention to create a trust. A founder must manifest the intention and pass on the property to trustees. Founder and trustees must comply with all applicable laws. Owing to state laws, a trust in question may have additional requirements. Example, Bombay Public Trust Act. Legal requirements of a society. The 7 major persons with an intention to create a society formulate an intention in a document called Memorandum of Association, compile other necessary details for administration called rules and regulations, register the society and comply with other rules as per the applicable laws, namely Society Registration Act. Legal requirements for a company. 3 major persons capable of entering into contract, an intention to establish a NGO under applicable company laws, draft Memorandum of Association and Article of Association, seek approval from the Registrar under Companies Act, publish in the newspapers, conduct the board meetings. A comparative chart gives us the detail of NGO legal framework types, methods in establishing, administering, winding up, legal process involved in each type, registration and other differential factors, legal requirements and implications involved in each type. Procedure for registration of NGO. An application to be made for obtaining the license under section 8 in form number 2, 14 part A as required under rules 2:16(2). An application shall be accompanied with following documents. Rule 2:16(4), draft memorandum and article of association of the company in form number 2:17, rule 2:16(3), declaration in form number 2:15 by an advocate, a chartered accountant, cost accountant or company secretary in practice that the draft memorandum and article of association have been drawn up in conformity with the provisions of section 8 and rules made thereunder. All the requirements under section 8 have been complied with. An estimate of the annual income and expenditure of the proposed society for the next 3 years, specifying the source of the income and the expenditure plans. An estimate of the future annual income and expenditure of the company for the next 3 years, specifying the sources of the income and the objects of the expenditure. A declaration in form number 2:16 by each of the members making the application and a copy of the board resolutions, members' resolutions. Second, give notice in newspapers. Within a week from the date of making the application to the registrar of companies, the applicant shall publish a notice in form number 2:18 at its own expense. At least once in a vernacular newspaper in the principal vernacular language of the district in which the registered office of the proposed company is to be situated and circulating in that district and at least once in English language in an English newspaper circulating in that district and on the website as may be notified by the central government. Copy of such notices in newspapers shall be submitted to the Registrar of Companies immediately after their publication. Rules 2:17(1). Third, approval of other authorities. The Registrar of Companies may require the applicant to furnish the approval or concurrence of any appropriate authority, regulatory body, department of ministry of the central and state government. Rule 2:17(2). Fourth, to decide on granting of license under section 8. The registrar will wait for 30 days for objections. If any or any person pursuant to notice published in newspapers, the registrar may also consult necessary authorities and regulatory bodies. Thereafter, the Registrar of Companies at its discretion may grant the license, and such license may contain conditions as deemed necessary by the registrar. Rule 2:17(3). The registrar may direct the company to insert in its memorandum or in its articles or partly in one and partly in the other such conditions of the license as may be specified by the registrar in this behalf. Rule 2:17(4). The documents required for registering an NGO are mainly Memorandum of Association, Article of Association or the rules and regulations, affidavit and covering letter. Memorandum of Association will consist of name of the organization, the address of the organization, the jurisdiction, aims and objectives, the founder members with their names, address, designation, age, occupation and nationality. Article of Associations, the rules and regulations or the bylaws. This will contain the name of the organization, the address of the organization, the jurisdictions, the aims and objectives, the interpretations as to what does the society mean, the general body, the member of the society, the board of management, etc. The membership also includes the founder members, the general body members, the fees that it will be entitled to, whether the members are invitees or advisory members. The rules and regulation also covers the duties, the powers of the governing body, the secretary and the treasurer. It also includes the expulsion from membership. The expulsion of membership will be mainly when the activity is against the organization's objectives, when the members do not attend consecutive meetings without proper reasons, when the member is of unsound mind and of criminal act. The code of conduct should be mentioned very clearly, where the members should abide by the Memorandum of Association as well as the Article of Association. The management, the affairs of the society managed by the boards and the elections in the AGBM for a period of 1 year, 3 years, etc. The general body and its functions with its regular meetings, members should pay the fees or whether no fees. Annual general meetings every year with 21 days of notice. The main thing that has been covered in the annual general body meeting is activity report, financial report, approval of budget as well as appointment of auditor. Besides the annual general body meetings, there can be an extraordinary general body meetings as and when the need arises. For every meeting there has to be a quorum mentioned in the article of association, whether it is 1/3 or 50%. The voting procedure has to be clearly mentioned, whether it is by election or by proposition. The financial year needs to be mentioned as to whether it is from 1st April to 31st March. The audit section has to be mentioned as to whether the accounts will be audited every year or once in 3 years. The fundraising methods, whether it is by entrance fee, monthly membership fees, grant in aid or special funds fundraising should be mentioned clearly in the rules and regulations. The bank account, on whether it is on president or the treasurer or secretary or the treasurer, needs to be mentioned in the article of association. The office bearers or the executive members are mainly the president, the vice president, the secretary, assistant secretary, treasurer or the executive member. The rules related to income and property should be mentioned very clearly. Property or income derived should be used for promotion of its objective. Profits should not be distributed. No remunerations or any benefit except for legal allowances for the trustees. Grants to be raised in cash or kind. Borrow or release money for purpose to meet the objectives. Any legal matters has to be addressed by whether president or the secretary. Any amendments that needs to be done in the memorandum of association has to be with the 3/5 majority. While dissolving the organization, we require at least 3/5 majority and the assets to be transferred to the NGOs with similar objectives. There are also certain legal bindings when you register an NGO. These are submission of the activity report, submission of the change report when there is a resignation or addition or deletion of members in the governing body, submission of audited report every year. Now, we will briefly look into the NGOs and tax laws. There is a need to seek permanent account number, the need to register under income tax and seek tax exemption, the need to comply with all relevant provisions, the need to seek additional direct and indirect tax benefits, ATG as well as 35AC. Need to amend as and when tax exemption and any objective activity of NGO pose certain conflict. NGO and foreign contributions. In India, a NGO has to register under the Home Ministry if it intends to receive any resources from the foreign sources. There are two types of registration methods called prior permission and registration. The government requires NGO to register and then receive resources from foreign sources. The government requires the NGOs to follow all the rules as per the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act 2010. The procedures also include specific bank accounts and reporting to the Home Ministry. Conclusion: India is famous for charities, but a systematic, uniform, institutionalized mechanism is not seen. This needs to be present for effective functioning and also for accountability. Lack of uniform, strong legal framework has left the possibility open for fraud and mismanagement. NGO sector has played a great complementary role in development and welfare activities in many rural and urban sectors where government failed to reach effectively. Let us sum up this module. In this module, the learner has got an opportunity to understand procedure of registering an NGO and various legal provisions. Learner has also got an opportunity to understand the salient features of registering an NGO under different acts. The module also provided basic understanding of drafting Memorandum of Associations and Article of Association, which is also called the Rules and Regulations, the taxation and foreign contribution related rules of NGOs in India. Thank you for attending this session.